By the time you leave, you know what you may need to do to get started or to sustain your work. So I'd like to introduce our panelists. We have Joseph Ricca, the superintendent of East Hanover. We have Michael Couchard, who is the superintendent of Bergenfield. And we have our two presenters from this morning. Stephen is somewhere out there. And then we have a special guest who's visiting us from Pennsylvania, Carl Atkinson, who is assistant superintendent of a small school district in Pennsylvania, who's also put the Teachscape program in place in his district. So we thought what we'd like to do is first start with one general question about sort of the demographics of your district or some issues that made that were of a particular concern to you when you looked at Teachscape. Could you start with one thing that you knew was an issue that you had to address? Whether it be budget, professional development, staffing, board support, what do you think that issue was for each of you? Okay.
You want to go in order? You want to
Okay.
say
We'll go in order? Okay.
Hi everyone. It's a delight to join you here today. I bring some perspectives from your next door neighbor, Pennsylvania. We've been using Teachscape specifically with their walkthrough tool in our district for the last couple of years. I'm trying to get the Reflect Live program in that Steve talked a little bit about earlier into our district. That's kind of where we're heading with this. We're very fortunate in that we've been using classroom walkthroughs, like I said, for the last couple of years, and I think that's geared us up a little bit better than some of our surrounding districts to have our teachers prepared for moving towards a more high-stakes evaluative process that we're heading towards in Pennsylvania as well. I guess the biggest need that I had as an assistant superintendent is the notion that I just did not know what was going on in classrooms on a regular basis. We were doing observations every year, we were doing evaluations every year, but other than reading the reports, the Valentine, so to speak, I did not have a really good, clear picture of daily practice, and I wanted to have that. I was missing, there's a great article, I can't remember the author, but it's called Dashboard Lights, and it's the story of a superintendent in Florida who got into the role as a district administrator, and he's a former fighter pilot, and realized that he had no instrumentation that told him where things were going. It was just a guess. He was like he was flying blind is the way he described it. And that was very much the sense that I had in coming into the position that I was in. I just didn't have a really good, clear picture, and I needed that. And that's something that Teachscape helped me with. So that was the big issue that we were facing.
Thank you.
Morning, everybody. It's really my pleasure to be here, and it's nice to, I think, talk to so many folks, and we're all kind of in different stages of implementation or research. In East Hanover Township, we're in the stage where we're going to be now. The board just adopted a resolution to move into Teachscape. This comes after a lot of research and a lot of work by the administrative staff, so we're kind of taking that next step now, which is nice to talk to you all and get your feedback, and particularly with the presenters today. I think one of the major considerations that we needed to first think about was what was going to be right for our district in terms of the research. And so we didn't just, and I know we're hearing a lot about Teachscape today, and it's not an infomercial for Teachscape, I can tell you. But what we need to do is we need to make sure that we did our research on what model is going to work best for our district. We had been employing a Danielson model for some time. We refined the model, began to implement incrementally, not just mini observations, or a lot of folks refer to them as walkthroughs, but also instructional rounds, and engaging the faculty and staff and the community in the conversation about instruction and the conversation about accountability and how we were going to be able to measure that accountability moving forward. As we continued to do our research and our due diligence, what kept emerging in our minds was that Teachscape was going to be able to provide for us all of the facets of what is an extremely complex endeavor, as you all know. I mean, as Steve was talking about earlier this morning, it is probably one of the most important things, if not the most important thing that we do every day as administrators, providing that critical feedback and support for our faculty and our staff members to be able to improve so that our student achievement improves. That was the critical component. A lot of times you're going to hear me, or you would hear me as a superintendent say the most important factor was the budget. It wasn't. What we needed to do is we needed to bring forward a recommendation to our Board of Education, our educational community, that we knew was going to be right for the district and going to be able to situate the district in such a way to provide for that professional development support so that we could ensure that the data that we were able to glean would be able to be used to improve student achievement. Thank you.
Good morning. First, I'd like to start out by saying to Stephen Gravali and to Lou, they did an excellent job presenting on 50% of the teacher evaluation, which is on teacher practice. There's another component of 50% student assessment. Bergenfield is one of the 10 pilot districts with EE4NJ, and I will share some of that with you during the course of the discussion. I'll give Steve a comment. Since he was a teacher in Bergenfield, he started his career as an English teacher in Bergenfield, and while he got many Valentines, I was his Cupid.
Better believe it, buddy. I'll take that. Better believe it.
I knew he'd say something if I didn't draw first blood. Why did Bergenfield participate and how did we come about it? Is we were involved with the work of inter-rater reliability through the University of Washington. They have a research-based assessment called the 5D, 5 Dimensions of Teaching. And we, well over a year ago, gave the test to our administrators, and they were normed locally to the 25 Bergenfield administrators as well as normed nationally. And we could see where we were strong, where we had to grow. So that was one piece that we've been doing the work in Bergenfield. The second piece that we've been involved with is the formative assessment benchmark testing. We utilize 2, and anything I say, it's not a commercial for whether it be 5D, Teachscape, McCrell, because it's only as good as the people using it and the buy-in of the district and the people in the district, teachers, administrators, and so forth. So anything I say, I think any tool, once you have the vision, the mission, and the implementation, would be a good tool to use. It's that working together, collegiality, and shared vision that makes it work. So we had the formative assessment of NWEA, and we used Renaissance Learning. We used that grades 1 through 11. So we have benchmark tests from grade 1 through 11, reading, language arts, math, and we see 4 times a year, not just how the students are progressing, but we have the technical skills for which the students are strong and weak. So we have 2 tools that we're using, the formative assessment, and we're using the 5D assessment for administrators to have that solid feedback, because it's all about making the teacher better, continuous improvement based on where they are and to get students at the best they can be. So that's where we are. There's a lot more to it, but those are my opening comments, and I'll pass it to Lou.
I think just from my title, you'll know that my interest was professional development, but the district's interest was we're hiring 60, 70, 80 new teachers a year. We all know how much that costs to go through that process. We wanted to hire well, and then we wanted to retain the people we hired, and this tool allowed us to look at the strengths and weaknesses of our new hires and build professional development to help them be successful.
The other question was, how did you gain the support of your union?
Early on in this process, one of the first things that we did was brought the union president in. I think it was Lou that said that, you know, getting them involved, having them see the surveys, the templates, was the biggest factor in this. I met with any teacher who was at all concerned. I welcomed any teacher at all to go out on a walk with me to see the process, and I still do that today. I still go out with teachers. I was out with a teacher last week who's doing some administrative work. And so that's just something that I believe very strongly in. I have nothing at all to hide for these surveys. I think they're absolutely excellent. And I think you know, part of that is in the crafting of the survey itself, and you know, getting teachers to buy into it just through being very open and transparent with them, I think was very helpful for us. So we just did it early, and we continue to make sure that teachers, if they have any questions or concerns at all, to see us. One of the things we do with Teachscape, and Lou, I wanted to ask you this, but I didn't get a chance to. We do our particular walkthroughs as de-identified. In other words, we do not attach names to them, which is something you can do with Teachscape. You can do a quick walkthrough that does not have any names associated with it. The downside of that is you don't get to do the Valentine. You don't get to have that individual conversation with the teacher about it, because we want to, excuse me, we want that just as data collected on a very, very wide scale. Our sense was if you do enough of these, you'll get a big picture of where things are within the district. And so we do walkthroughs in that fashion. Very, very different than our observation process.
Well, one of the things, to reiterate exactly what you're saying, is when your house is clean, you don't mind leaving the door open. So what we were able to do was, again, we have a very difficult situation with the constant change, constant turnover, what I refer to as initiative fatigue among staff. You know, I met with some staff, and I said, I've been here 27 years. Just don't change everything now from under me. I'm tired of it. It's always something different. And again, through the explanation of what the process was meant to do versus what the perception was. It's just like we do with parents or we do with anybody else. Once they are informed, they will trust the process. And so that's where if you take away that cloak of secrecy, if you bring them to the table and say, look, this is what we're doing, this is why we're doing it. We're not doing it to hurt you, we're not doing it to create a gotcha system. Now we do track by names and things like that for our own purposes, and again, that is up to each individual district. But that was really what the conversation, you know, there's a lot that's called, you know, personal social capital. You know, a lot can be discussed over a cup of coffee, informally. Here's what we're trying to do, let me show it to you. And I offer the same type of open door policy. If anybody has a concern, come on in, let's talk about it, let's see what it's about. And you know, a big fear was always that this huge chunk of data was all going to go into a personnel fund. No, you know, you got to stop the rumors in their tracks kind of thing, because they can be very damaging. And once you got some of the higher ups involved and let them feel like they were part of it, that's how we're able to get the. We're still working on it. That's a constant process. I want you to know that. It doesn't happen overnight, and you don't flip it like a light switch. But we're keeping them in the loop.
It is a constant process. I think if you take the opportunity to read the Chicago study that was alluded to earlier, one of the things that's most important that we recognize, we're talking about the union, of course, or faculty member buy-in, but one of the things that's most important that the study identified was that your administrators need to buy in first. And that is a critical component. So even before we got to the conversation with the association or individual faculty members, first we had to make sure we worked very closely and carefully with the administrative team to identify what was going to be best for us. Every single one of you has a different dynamic, climate and culture in your schools and in your school district. And you're going to want to make a choice that's going to reflect what the needs of your individual district are. It worked very well for us because we were using a Danielson model. So it wasn't a foreign body to introduce into the discussion of evaluation. And when we started to really think about moving forward with the EE4NJ grant, which we did apply for and didn't receive last year, we started that conversation rather early. I meet with the co-presidents of the association monthly just to have a sort of sit down and talk about things that are going on in the district, and we started to have that conversation back then in May. So as the conversation continued to grow and become more complex, the faculty were on board all along the way. But Steve's right, it's a constant conversation, constant dialogue that needs to take place. Many of you have probably heard about the DAC, the District Advisory Council, that you're going to be required to implement in your school districts. If you haven't already started to do that, that's a great way to break the ice and to begin the conversation about moving forward.
great point to pass the microphone. That is that, and it is the logic of Bergenfield, is it's coming at us. New Jersey is the 27th state to undergo teacher evaluation reform. Not the first, the 27th. So we appealed to our faculty, to our union, and said we could work together and we could develop a tool that we choose under the rules of engagement with the state, or we could wait a year or two and just take what the state gives us, your choice. And it was pretty much unanimous that our union, our teachers, our administrators decided to work collaboratively to develop the tool. And that's what it's been for the past year, a collaborative approach. The way that we've built the trust was not just giving them superficial buy-in, but having a place at the table. And it was using an expansive leadership model. So we took the domains, the 4 domains of Danielson. We then decided as an administrative group, then we have 30 teachers involved in the training as a teacher group. Are we going to use the elements, the over 80 elements, or the 22 components of Danielson? We chose to take the 22 components and use that as our evaluation tool. But then we noticed as we went through it, meeting after meeting, we noticed that it wasn't really very solid in all of the 22 components. So then we went through it and used some of the elements in place of components, and we came up with something that we really felt strongly in. So after that, we had gallery walks all throughout, poster paper, took the poster papers, gave to every principal, and then at faculty meetings, all the faculty had input into the assessment tool that we were creating. Phase 2 was coming up with the evidence under each category of what it exactly looks like of effective teaching under that component, ineffective under that component, and so forth. So we had a collective buy-in from the administrators, teachers, over time. And this is all on the Bergenfield website. If you click on the banner, EE4NJ on our website, and all of the tools that we have been creating are there.
One of the things that we did early on in the process is we used our school and local professional development committees as launching points to talk about using this tool. To answer the question from the other end of the table, all our data for walkthroughs was anonymous through the process so far. It also didn't hurt that we had the union president as a teacher leader in our district and worked very closely with our PD program, so we already had some buy-in from her, and that definitely helped us. We've not been using the Tomlinson model, we've been using the Monroe model. We've stolen a little bit from everybody, and one of the things I liked about it is we were able to create a tool that met our needs. And one of the things I loved about the Teachscape model is we can create as many tools as we wanted and design them the way we wanted to. As you saw, we have 7 models right now. Every model, before it goes out, the union does get a chance to look at, and our PD committees get a chance to look at.
Knowing that the core curriculum standards and the PARC assessments are coming, how are you preparing to collect data on student performance when these assessments, sometimes the data comes in late and it's not always user-friendly for what you're trying to do with teachers? Have you developed other mechanisms to get that student achievement data?
Pennsylvania is also doing, it sounds like what you guys are doing here in Jersey, which is going to be an evaluation system that's based on a 50-50 split, 50% being the observation and 50% being some type of student achievement data. They're allowing for a certain percentage of that other 50% to be locally developed, locally designed assessments, and we're working right now in realigning our core curriculums of English, language arts, and mathematics around Common Core. We're working very, very feverishly to try to get that done. And then at the same time, working on creating a series of district-wide common assessments, probably done on a quarterly basis. We use a product called Performance Tracker. I don't know if you guys have that over here, but Performance Tracker allows us to align all of our assessments to standards anchors, and then we can calculate all that data in that way. My guess is Pennsylvania is still not fully determined what that other 50% of the pie is going to exactly look like. My guess is we'll be using some of that locally grown, developed assessment data for that, and that's probably where most of our own efforts in Common Core will come from.
And that's a very tough question, so you have to drop a very tough one. Curriculum is one of our biggest needs as a district. Curriculum development is one of our biggest needs. We're in the process of doing the same. We've met the minimum requirements. We have the K-2 math Common Core correlation in place for September, science, et cetera. We're in the process of revising our language arts curriculum. But talking about assessments, we don't have district-wide assessments right now. One of the craziest things that we've been dealing with too is even when we talk about midterm examinations and things like that at our high school level, what we found is they were just high-stakes tests, and that they were not departmentalized examinations, they were not correlated to the expectations within the curricula, which again is the fault of central office because we didn't put that curriculum and set that expectation clearly enough. So we're, with that, in the absence of assistants, in the absence of a director of curriculum, you can imagine amongst the other things that's on your plate, that's tough. What I have found useful, I didn't purchase, my SIS is my strongest tool that I use, my student information system. We use Pearson's Power School in our district. I'm a huge supporter and fan of that. I've been able to customize it. It's the most customizable tool if you've ever used it. So what we've been able to do is we didn't purchase there's an add-on for it that correlates, Pearson Inform, thank you, exactly what it was. It was only about $7,000 or $8,000 for our district. When we looked at, I met with Barry Ehrlichson from the Department of Education, and they were talking about the long-term goal for New Jersey Smart. And if you really start to dig into the Ed Analyzer, it's really like Greek if you're unfamiliar with it, but if you take some of the trainings for Ed Analyzer through NJ Smart, you can customize your own data through there. We've been able to upload and actually use that as a tool for us. So that's why we shied away from Inform, although I wish we did. I kind of want to have both of them side by side, so it allows me to pare down data and local district assessments as well as standardized assessments all the way down to the teacher level and track them all the way along. Ed, I can tell you right now, NJ Smart isn't there yet, where Pearson's thing is, but we're hopeful that it is, and we've been able to use that right now for some preliminary data, but it's not as valid, I'll be completely honest, not as valid as I'd like it to be. So that's a process for us right now.
I think we're also in a process of, we do use district-wide benchmark testing to identify student levels, and we do administer that assessment periodically throughout the course of the school year so we can identify growth. I think that's what we're really reaching for, a way that we're able to look at student A and determine where student A was in September and identify whether or not student A grew by January. When you look at, for instance, NJDOE scores or ESPA scores, you recognize it's a high-stakes test, and oftentimes the data does come to you too late for you to really implement any meaningful change in that particular classroom. So we are using those benchmark testing. We also have taken the data and connected it to our individual faculty members over the course of 3 years so that we can start identifying areas in our own district where we're seeing strength and areas that could that does have some weakness, so we can support that, support those weakened areas. The most important thing that we've been doing, I think, is having a good, hearty, robust conversation about data and student performance with the recognition that whether or not, like our colleagues are saying up here, whether or not something we necessarily agree with, and there's a lot of philosophical conversation that could be, we could talk about today, value-added test scores and the like. This is the direction in which we're moving. We do need to recognize that there is going to be a discernible component of student achievement attached to professional development, or rather professional evaluation, both for, not just for teachers, but also for principals. And collecting that data longitudinally so that we can use it to the best of our ability has been something that we're working on. And I think those benchmarking, we do use Pearson Inform, where we are going to be using it as well. So that'll give us a better look at the data as we move forward.
Elaine, I'm going to do something going outside of my comfort level, and that is I'm going to try to inform everybody about what the state is expecting in the fall of 2012. So I'm not an expert on the state, and I know the rules of engagement change. So if I'm saying things incorrect or that changed in the past 2 days, stop it. It is my belief that in the fall of 2012, all of you will have at least one school that will have to implement a teacher evaluation model, of which 50% will be data assessment. The data assessed will be the New Jersey ASK scores in grades 4 through 8 only, not grade 3, and they will all be translated into a student growth percentile. Good. Great. So while we have the 35% in the fall student growth percentile, there will also be 5 to 10%, which could be school-wide, which could be one of the formative assessments, and up to 10% other, portfolio, etc. But in June 2012, we then may have the opportunity to go with 35 to 45% approved student growth percentile using an approved assessment. So therefore, we in Bergenfield are going to continue to utilize NWEA and Renaissance Learning that has helped us to identify the skills for which the students are strong, need of help, and also it's been a great tool to, as one of the great phrases I've picked up from these EE4NJ meetings is, you have to become a treasure hunter versus a witch hunter. And when you start to mine the data, we found some incredible teaching that might not look like great pageantry when you go in the class, but the student assessment results are undeniable. I have a 5th grade math teacher who 3 years in a row has over 90% of her students advanced mastery on a school that doesn't have more than 25% advanced mastery. We tap that information and we utilize that teacher now to be a job coach, work with other teachers, so now I don't have magic happening in one 5th grade class, I have it happening in 8 classes across the district.
What did you give that teacher, if you don't mind my asking, as an incentive?
I'm sorry?
What did you give that teacher as an incentive to work with the other teachers? Was it just release time?
It was something that was said earlier today. You're giving the teacher acknowledgement of their great practice, and you're giving them an opportunity to share. People who are doing good things like to share the good things they like to do.
Right.
So it goes right back to acknowledging the good work people are doing, and then it creates a snowball effect.
Thank you.
In Monroe Township 2 years ago, we brought in a program of our own called MFR, Managing for Results, where we track student data both on standardized tests and also teacher-created formative assessments, and we use that data to travel with our teachers, or with our students from teacher to teacher, so we can identify areas of strength and weakness. To piggyback on what he just said, with that information, we can find teachers that have expertise in areas of need, and those who are the teachers we select to be our teacher leaders and do our in-house training for us. So the data, again, gives us a lot of information so that we're putting the right people in the right spot, in the right location. A little bit differently, because we brought our professional development in-house, we pay our teacher leaders for preparation time. We have model classrooms for differentiated instruction and for ICR, and we also have teacher coaches that go out into the buildings, and we pay them for preparation. They're already getting paid to be in the district, so it's just a small amount we pay them for their time and planning.
Okay. We're going to open this up for a few questions before we break for lunch. They want us to leave at 11:30 before the students all go out for lunch. And you have to take an oath that you will come back and not run to your buildings. Are we far enough away that you can't go to your schools and come back? Yay. Okay, so when we break, it'll be this area over here you're welcome to go to, or to the student center and have a warm lunch if you like. The letter that gives all these requirements that are going to be our script is on the department's website. If you go to the February 8th letter from the commissioner, it's all spelled out. And I don't even speak about those timelines without that letter in front of me, because it's so essential that people have a consistent understanding. And then the last thing before I open it up is, one of the factors here is that they're looking for districts to collaborate with neighboring districts on researching national practices and finding improvements to implementation strategies. Can I ask this audience, how many of you are currently collaborating with other districts on any issues around? Okay, gentlemen, you, that's an issue? It's a change in the culture of the state, I think, big time. So that's something we may want to discuss further. Before we open it up, is there anything you gentlemen would like to share from your position?
Just one thing, just more of an advertisement than anything else. Although I am the assistant superintendent in the Saucon Valley School District, today I'm here representing the Danielson group. Charlotte Danielson has basically a group of consultants that go around the country and provide professional development for teachers in the form of an overview of the framework, as well as observation skills professional development. I know Teachscape has a lot of online resources. Teachscape is a partner with the Danielson group, and we do the face-to-face training for them. So if you want any information about that, I'll be happy to talk to you. You can also check out Danielson.org and see their website for the kind of services that are provided. So any questions about those face-to-face professional development opportunities, I'll be happy to talk to you about that in any way.
Could we have a round table with you on this after lunch?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, again, ladies and gentlemen, please reach out. Another Twitter plug, I just tweeted the memo out, so if you're following there, you can download it right now and take a look at it from February 8th. That's what I was trying to verify some things. But again, anything you need, we're happy to reach out. It's about sharing. I love collaborating with other professionals and seeing what great things other people are doing, because you know what, the more I learn, the more I realize I need to know. And I learned a lot of great things just from great conversations with professionals like yourself. So please reach out, email, call, love to speak with you.
Steve reminds me of that commercial that's so 47 seconds ago.
That's right. Yep, got it.
The one thing that continues to sort of strike me and that I continue to reflect on, and I know our administrators do, is to be prepared for what's in one of the research studies, which I'm sure you're going to read, the corrective downturn. You know, we've heard of implementation dips. When we do new things, when we start new things, sometimes the performance level decreases, drops, scores decline. When you begin this work, if you're in a district that is used to everybody receives glowing evaluations, that's going to change, and that's something that you're going to have to be able to be prepared to deal with in terms of your climate and your culture. That corrective downturn is something that folks need to recognize is part of the professional growth process. It's not, like everyone has said, a way to identify the weak link to get rid of them immediately. And again, that's a conversation I think you're going to want to have early. It's something you're going to really want to think about, and how you're going to be able to communicate that clearly and effectively with not just your faculty and your staff members or your administrators, but also your boards of education and your greater community. Because remember, the scores, the rankings, the ratings will be available to the public online. And that's something that you as the leader need to be able to have. We call it controlling the message. And you're going to want to make sure you can do that as you move forward.
I'm just pausing to think whether I should use this quote or not. It's a little off color, but I'm going to use it. I like the quote, everybody knows the person has body odor except the person themselves. And I think that quote's very good when you relate it to teacher practice. It goes to the person in the mirror every morning that says, I'm going to do a great job today, or I'm a great teacher. It's getting to the point where the teacher can self-reflect and look at a rubric and understand where he or she falls on the continuum of great teaching as evidenced by student learning. So I think that's the ultimate goal, that is the work that we're all involved with. I have two resources I'll leave on the table, one of which is the teacher evaluation system model that the state is hoping we all complete, and then a resource on developing evaluation systems, all types of references there. And also, if you do go on the Bergenfield EE4NJ website, we also are linked into the state EE4NJ, which is another great resource.
We are also a pilot district for EE4NJ, so if you go on the Monroe website, which is monroe.k12.nj.us, you can find our link to EE4NJ. We also have a link to our professional development program, which would show you our model and how we use data and the tools that we use for driving our professional development.
Great. Any questions that you'd like to ask before we break for lunch? Yes, something we haven't addressed.
Okay, I'm going to ask this question and see what kind of responses I get. Concerning the gathering of data in a classroom, and then concerning the use of video or audio recording, why is it that this is something that would have so much legal ramifications? If it's still the gathering of data, I don't see about a classroom being such a private place. So what are the legal ramifications on that, or anything?
Now, I'm not an attorney, but I did stay at a Holiday Inn Express last night. And what I can tell you is there aren't any, and I agree with you 1,000%. Okay, just like when I go into the bank or I go into any store, I'm on video camera 38 times a second. There is no expectation of privacy. Again, you're an employee, you're a professional. We say that to our students when we give out that little release in the student handbook about locker searches and 18A and what we can do every single year. So the point is, it's not. The only confidentiality issues you do have is, again, with the photo video release for within the students' rights. Okay, you're looking at FERPA and PERPA and things like that. However, when it's internal and it's not going to be shared with outside of anyone, if I were sharing with you, I would have some student confidentiality issues. I would need to make sure that I had parental releases, etc., or that the students were not, visible. But I can tell you that it's not when it's internal. So don't let anybody, sell you that bill of goods that that needs to be. It's, I think, without, and I'll pass it to my colleagues. I think that it may have been a comfort level to start collecting data anonymously. As we talk about the buy-in at that union level, we know there was a fierce opposition to this type of thing, and everybody needs to be the same, lockstep, that kind of perspective. But don't, as far as legal ramifications, if you're not sharing that data, I can collect data 1,000 times a second on you all day, and I can film you all day, every day, if I so choose to, because this is not a private area. This is semi-public property. Remember, schools are semi-public. They're not public places. They're semi-public. But as the employer, as a Board of Education, and as local district administration, you'd certainly have that management prerogative.
Steve, would that include special education students if the filming took place in a special ed class?
It would all be the same. Again, I would check with your board attorney, as I'm not trying to give legal advice, but what I'm saying is if I'm not sharing that data outside of anyone else, there is an expectation of confidentiality as you are an employee. That's our, there are several policies that you'll have at your board level with regards to unbecoming conduct and expectations of professional performance. That would be no different, so forget about filming. That would be no different than a teacher who goes to ShopRite and shares data about a child with another parent or a member of the public. That's still a violation of that child's rights. So as long as the data, so whether it was a video or, Johnny really did terrible on his test and sharing that, that's a violation of that child's rights. The issue is just as long as it's not shared and it's internal,